intravenous route. Okay, so first class which we have covered is fast acting drugs. So generally those are used for induction. Okay, so since they act very quickly, within a few seconds they will start producing anesthetic effect. So that is the reason why they are preferably used for induction. Okay, and this second subclass, it says that these are slower acting drugs. Okay, so these will start their anesthetic action a little bit slowly. So these are generally not preferred as inducing agent, but for maintenance or for minor procedure or as adjuvant drugs, these agents are preferably used. Okay, under this again there are three sub classifications. Okay, benzodiazepines, then we have opioid analgesic, we have dissociative anesthesia. Okay, so under this the first subclass is benzodiazepines or BZDs as they are popularly known as. We have seen the detailed pharmacology of this class in the chapter sedative hypnotics. Okay, so these benzodiazepines also have anesthetic property. Okay, in a little bit higher doses are required to produce the anesthetic effect. As we have seen that the response is graded. Lower doses will produce sedation, little bit higher doses produces the hypnotic action, that is induced sleep, and little bit higher doses can also produce the anesthesia. Okay, so this class of drug benzodiazepines is also used as an anesthetic, mainly the supplemental one. Okay, apart from the being used as an anesthetic, it is also used as a pre-anesthetic medication also because of some additional properties. We will see this under the last part of the chapter, that is pre-anesthetic medication. Okay, so BZDs, no doubt they are used as pre-anesthetic medication, but these are also used for the induction as well as maintenance as well as supplementing the anesthesia. Okay, that is along with other drugs for balanced anesthesia. Also it is used for something known as a conscious sedation. We will see what this concept is. So this conscious sedation can also be produced by benzodiazepine. Benzodiazepine also are one of the type of drugs which can be used for this particular purpose. Okay, so now here, as I have said, that a little bit larger doses will be required to produce the anesthesia. Okay, so a little bit larger doses which are injected intravenously, they will produce sedation, drowsiness will be produced, amnesia. Okay, the person will not be able to recall what was happening, and unconsciousness. But the time taken over here is little bit longer, that is 5 to 10 minutes. Okay, whereas in case of inducing agents, we have seen that they induce within a few seconds, say 15 to 20 seconds itself, they will result in unconsciousness. But over here it's benzodiazepines, these are taking 5 to 10 minutes for them to induce the unconsciousness or produce the complete anesthesia. Okay. Now supposing if this drug is not given along with other anesthetic or opioid, if this particular drug is given alone, then the patient may become responsive within 1 hour. Okay, that is, the person will start gaining consciousness or will recover from the anesthesia within 1 hour. Okay, if no other anesthetic or if no other opioid is or opioid analgesic is combined over here, because these drugs show a great degree of redistribution. Okay, redistribution meaning initially they will reach the brain very high concentrations, but later on what will happen, they will start coming out of the brain because of the redistribution. It will start entering into the other less vascular organs, and redistribution will result in the termination of its action, so that the person will start gaining the consciousness. Over here the action is production of sedation, amnesia and unconsciousness. So the person will start gaining the consciousness back again if it is not supplemented by other anesthetic or when it is used alone. But here amnesia, even though the person will start recovering, amnesia will persist for around about 2 to 3 hours, and sedation will remain, that is, a person will remain drowsy or confused, little bit confused for around about 6 hours or more, even more than that. Okay, and if this drug is given in even larger doses, then the recovery is further delayed. That is, a person will take a little bit longer time to recover from the anesthesia or amnesia or sedation which is induced. Okay. Then one more property with BZDs is that it is a poor analgesic. As we have seen in the ideal properties that anesthetic has to be a very good analgesic, but BZDs are poor analgesics. So you cannot totally rely only upon the BZDs. So you have to give a supplemental dose of, or as an adjuvant you are supposed to administer an opioid analgesic along with it, or even nitrous oxide may be combined. Okay, because nitrous oxide has analgesic property. Okay, so if at all there is any painful procedures, you need to combine it with a opioid analgesic or with a nitrous oxide. However, there is one problem which is produced by this combination with opioids. Okay, otherwise as such BZDs, they do not markedly depress the respiration. We have seen in the earlier anesthetics also that certain anesthetics, they depress the respiration, so that ventilatory support has to be given, cardiac contractility is depressed, okay, BP falls. Okay, so as such BZDs, they do not depress the respiration or the cardiac contractility, or BP doesn't fall. Okay, but when they are combined with opioids, then these functions are considerably compromised. So the combination will affect this. The combination can produce depression in the respiration, cardiac contractility, or BP may fall. So you should be giving the supportive measures to the person. Okay, ventilatory support may be given, the BP should be maintained within normal. Okay, so such measures have to be given when these drugs are combined together. Then other effects of BZDs include, it decreases the muscle tone by central action. Okay, we have seen this class of drug under centrally acting muscle relaxant also. It is acting as a centrally acting muscle relaxant. Okay, so no doubt the muscle tone is reduced. Okay, but still there is a need for addition of neuromuscular blocking agents. Okay, now why it is required is because the muscle relaxation which is produced by BZDs, this is not of surgical grade. That means sufficient amount of muscle relaxation is not produced over here. Okay, so complete relaxation of the skeletal muscles is not produced, which is expected by a surgeon. Okay, so for that matter, in spite of BZDs reducing the muscle tone, in spite of them having the muscle relaxant property, still you need to add a neuromuscular blocking agents when BZDs are used as anesthetic. Okay, then one advantage with these drugs is that they do not provoke the post-operative nausea and vomiting. This is seen with some of the anesthetics. In the post-operative period, nausea and vomiting may be precipitated. So this is not a problem with BZDs when BZDs are used as anesthetics. Then even the involuntary movements are also not stimulated. The person will not make any involuntary movements. Okay, when benzodiazepines are given as anesthetics. Coming to the uses, now in what conditions these BZDs are used? It is used for procedures like endoscopies, wherein camera is inserted with the help of intubations, wherein internal examinations are done of maybe your GI tract or something like that. Okay, so endoscopies, BZDs are given to anesthetize the person, okay, to produce the sedation so that the person should not resist the intubations and all. Okay, then cardiac catheterization. If there is any kind of diagnostic procedures to be carried out, okay, wherein catheterization, catheters are introduced. Say for example, angiographies. Here a catheter, it is introduced through a vein and it reaches your, the coronary arteries, so that any kind of blockages, if at all they are present, it can be diagnosed, okay, with the procedure of angiographies. This we have seen under the CVS chapter also. Then conscious sedation, BZDs are also used for this particular purpose of conscious sedation, where the person is sedated but the unconsciousness is not produced. Okay, we'll see what this concept is. Okay, then fracture settings. Okay, so minor fracture settings, if at all there is any fracture of the bones. So during fracture settings also BZDs can be used. ECTs, that is electroconvulsive therapy. So this is given generally in those patients who are mentally ill. Okay, shock treatment has to be given in such individuals to normalize the mental functions sometime. For such procedures also, benzodiazepines are preferably used, because these therapies generally may provoke the seizures. Okay, and BZDs, they have anti-epileptic property also, we have seen. Okay, so it is used over here in this particular condition, ECT. Okay, when the electroconvulsive therapy is given. Okay. Then it is also a part of balanced anesthesia. Okay, no doubt these are benzodiazepines are used individually for these purposes. Apart from this, it is also used in combination with other anesthetics in what is called as a balanced anesthesia. This we have seen that over here a number of anesthetics are combined together to produce the appropriate anesthesia. Rather than giving a single anesthetic in high doses, a number of anesthetics are combined to produce what is known as a balanced anesthesia. So sometimes the properties are, one property may be expected from one drug. Say one anesthetic may have good analgesic property. Okay, another anesthetic may have good skeletal muscle relaxant property. And altogether, when more than one anesthetic is combined, their NACs may add up. This we have seen under the kinetics also. So individual doses will be reduced. It will be very helpful to reduce the individual dose. So toxicities are also ruled out. So BZDs is one of the drugs which is preferably used in producing what is known as a balanced anesthesia, which is used nowadays. Okay, and if at all the person, if BZD is used as an anesthetic in a particular person, now if the surgery is over and you need not want that person to remain drowsy or remain sedated over a period of time, right? The person may remain drowsy or motor functions may get affected for hours together even after the surgery is over, so that the person may not be able to walk on their own. Okay, so the anesthetic action of this BZD can also be reversed by giving flumazenil. Okay, we have already seen that this is a BZD antagonist, which is specifically used as an antidote when BZD toxicity takes place. Okay, but one of the use of flumazenil also we have seen that it can reverse the anesthesia which can be produced by BZD. So once the purpose of your BZD is over, you can reverse the actions produced by your BZD. So the person may gain consciousness, may not remain sedated, or the motor functions may not remain impaired for hours together after the surgery. So you can reverse all those actions. Here it is not used as an antidote, but here it is used to reverse all its action in a dose of 0.5 to 2 milligrams in the IV route. Okay, so these are few of the examples. Diazepam is used, a dose is given over here. It's generally given in a running IV drip. Okay, now why it is given in a running IV drip? Directly it is not injected intravenously because it produces a burning sensation in the vein. Okay, wherever you are injecting it, it can result in burning sensation of that vein or thrombophlebitis of that vein. The intimal damage of the vein may take place. That is the reason why diazepam is not preferred in case of emergencies we have seen. Okay, so it has to be given in a IV drip. Okay, so this is a major drawback of diazepam. So for that purpose, additional drugs have come into picture. Lorazepam, this is 3 times more potent. However, though it is lower acting, but it is less irritating as compared to diazepam. Okay, so this particular problem, burning sensation, thrombophlebitis, is ruled out with this lorazepam. Midazolam, this is again one more BZD with which is water soluble, and it is also non-irritating to the veins. Again, this midazolam, it acts as a faster drug. Okay, so though the action lasts for short period of time, still it is faster acting, and also it is 3 times more potent than that of diazepam. So even less dose is required, it is less irritating, so it's again an advantage over diazepam. So it is preferred over the diazepam. Though fall in BP is a problem, it produces greater degree of fall in BP as compared to diazepam. Okay, but it is preferred over diazepam for its anesthetic use. Okay. Apart from being used as an anesthetic, it is also used to sedate the critically ill patients. Okay, so those patients who are admitted to ICUs, who are on mechanical ventilators, okay, such patients who are critically ill. So in such patients also it may be used. It relaxes the muscles, so it can be, this property can be used, though it is not a very good muscle relaxant, but still it has centrally acting muscle relaxant property. So for those patients who are supposed to be ventilated, meaning here the artificial respiration is supposed to be provided to the patient. So sometimes the wall, the chest wall or the thoracic wall, the muscles, skeletal muscles in your thoracic wall may resist the ventilation, that is inflation may be resisted. Okay, so at that time such drugs may be given, BZDs. Maybe it will supplement because it has sedative property. So those patients who are critically ill, maybe it will help them to bear the pain or whatever disguise they are feeling from, and also it will supplement the intubation or ventilation. Okay, so this is an added advantage with this drug midazolam. Then coming to the second class, subclass under the slower acting agent. Okay, so dissociative anesthesia. Okay, so this is a concept which is produced by a drug ketamine. Actually, this ketamine drug, it is pharmacologically related to this drug, phencyclidine. Phencyclidine actually is a hallucinogen. Hallucinogen meaning a drug which can produce conditions or symptoms or the mental conditions similar to that of a mentally ill person. Okay, so symptoms which are seen in a psychotic person, similar type of symptoms may be seen when these drugs are administered. Okay, hallucinogen. So this ketamine is related to this hallucinogen type of agents. So here how these properties can be utilized, because it specifically produce certain circumstances or certain characteristic features are produced when this ketamine is administered to the person. It produces analgesia, immobility, the person will not show any movement. Okay, amnesia will be produced and light sleep will be introduced. Mind it, here anesthesia, the complete anesthesia is not produced, the person will not lose consciousness over here. Okay, so this phenomenon, when all these modalities are produced, this is known as dissociative anesthesia, and it is specifically produced by this ketamine. So here what happens is the person appears to be conscious. Okay, though drowsiness is produced over here, person may open his eyes, make some shallow movements. Okay, muscles will become stiff, the muscle tone will be increased, but the person will be unable to process the sensory stimuli, or the person do not react to them. Okay, so there will be a state of dissociation from his or her own body towards the surrounding. Okay, so the person though is conscious but still drowsy, analgesia is produced, immobility is produced, so that even if there is some kind of sensory stimuli, they will not be able to process that, they will not respond to that particular stimuli. So the site of action where this ketamine acts is in the cortex or subcortical areas. Then advantage is there in terms of effects on respiration. Respiration is not depressed. We have seen with the earlier agents that respiration is depressed. Okay, so this is not the problem. Respiration is not depressed, respiration is maintained. Bronchi dilate, so this property will be of very important value in the asthmatic patient. If the patient is suffering from asthma, this is a plus point. You can safely give this drug to patients who are suffering from asthma. Airway reflexes, these are maintained. Okay, then muscle tone increases. Now this is a problem. Okay, muscle tone may be increased. Limb movements, of shallow movements are made by the person. Okay, so limb, maybe hands or arms or legs, may be there may be shallow movements in your limbs. Okay, then another problem is with your cardiovascular system. heart rate, the cardiac output and the blood pressure. All these three modalities are elevated. This is because of the sympathetic stimulation. Okay, so because ketamine produces sympathetic stimulation, heart rate is increased, cardiac output is increased, and obviously the BP will also rise because of these two. Okay, so it is not safe in those patients who are already having some kind of cardiovascular problems. It is supposed to be administered very carefully, or rather you should switch over to another type of agent in those who are suffering from some cardiovascular condition like congestive heart failure or maybe hypertension patient. It can be dangerous because BP is elevated over here. Okay, so care has to be taken when it is administered to patient who is already suffering from some kind of cardiovascular conditions. Now these are the doses in which these ketamine is administered. It is administered by parenteral route, okay, either IV route 1 to 2 milligrams per kg, or intramuscularly a dose a little bit higher 3 to 5 milligrams per kg. So within a minute, okay, not even a minute, less than a minute it will take to produce all its type of actions, okay, analgesia, amnesia, immobility, all these will start within a minute, but recovery will start within 10 to 15 minutes. Okay, so person will start recovering, but amnesia will persist. Out of all the modalities, amnesia will persist for around about 1 to 2 hours. Other problems include emergence delirium, that is while recovery the person may suffer from delirium. This is a slight state of mental confusion. The person will appear to be confused, will not be able to think coherently in this condition while recovery. Hallucinations may be precipitated. Remember, it is a hallucinogen. Okay, it's a congener. So it can precipitate hallucinations, that is hearing or seeing something which is not existing. Then involuntary movements may occur, because we have seen that shallow movements are possible, movements of limbs are possible. So some degree of involuntary movement may be seen in up to 50% of the patients who are being administered with this agent. Okay, so these may occur during the recovery from this anesthesia. Okay, children, however, can tolerate this drug better as compared to the adults. Coming to the little bit of kinetics part, it is metabolized in liver, and elimination T half-life of this drug is 2 to 4 hours. Okay, so though recovery starts very quickly, still the drug persists in the body for a little bit longer time. T half-life is 2 to 4 hours. Coming to the uses, it is used for operations of the head and neck. Okay, in patients who have bled, meaning if such patients in whom there is head or neck injury, in whom lot of bleeding has taken place, ketamine is preferred in such cases. Asthmatics also, because bronchi are dilated, so it is preferably used in asthmatics, those who are already suffering from asthma, or in those patients who do not want to lose the consciousness. Some patients may not want to lose the complete consciousness. Preferably these are used for shorter operations and minor operations. Major surgeries cannot be carried out with the use of ketamine. So also repeated use also is quite safe. So for that matter, it can be preferred for burn dressing. So those patients who are severely burnt, so in them regularly dressing has to be done, and it is quite painful. So in such cases, ketamine can be given so that they can bear the pain, okay, during dressing, which can be done. Okay, apart from that, it is also combined with diazepam, okay, for procedures like angiographies, cardiac catheterization and trauma surgeries. Okay, however, care has to be taken in those patients who are suffering from some kind of cardiovascular conditions, because we have seen that BP rises, heart rate increases and cardiac output also is elevated. So it can be dangerous in hypertensives, those who already have BP problem, high BP problem, ischemic heart disease or congestive heart failure, okay, or those patients who are also suffering from raised intracranial pressure, in whom the intracranial pressure inside the brain, if it is already high, okay, then it can be dangerous sometimes, okay, because it increases the cerebral blood flow and oxygen consumption. However, it is good for hypovolemic patient who are suffering from hypovolemia, Okay, that is decrease in the blood fluid level. Such patients it is safer. Coming to the next drug, that is the third subclass under slower acting agent is opioid analgesic. This is a type of opioid analgesic which is highly lipophilic in nature and short acting. It has potent opioid analgesic property. Okay, so it is a very good analgesic related to pethidine. Pethidine is also an opioid analgesic. So this fentanyl is related to this pethidine given by IV route. Okay, so intravenous route is a preferable one by which this fentanyl is supposed to be administered. So since it is an opioid analgesic, obviously whatever if at all there is any painful stimuli, all that will be abolished. Okay, so pain will not be felt by that particular person. So reflexes relating to your painful stimuli all will be abolished. Again, this drug is also used as a supplement. Okay, so those anesthetics, certain anesthetics we have seen that they have poor analgesic property. So to supplement their poor analgesic property, you can add fentanyl to that. Okay, say for example in case of balanced anesthesia, where anesthesia has to be kept light, where lower doses of anesthetics are supposed to be used. So in that case you can supplement the action of that anesthetic with the help of this opioid analgesic. So lower concentrations of these anesthetic may be utilized. Okay, so high amount of anesthetics may not be required because you are supplementing its analgesic action with the help of fentanyl. So balanced anesthesia is used over here. Lower amount of anesthetics are used, and along with that opioid analgesic is added so that the person will not feel the pain. Okay, then combined with BZDs, when fentanyl is combined with the BZDs, you may not require an additional inhaled anesthetic. Okay, it can obviate the need, meaning it will not require an additional inhalational anesthetic to be supplemented when fentanyl is added to BZDs. Okay, because BZDs we have seen that it has poor analgesic property. Okay, so BZDs can be combined with an opioid analgesic. However, you should be very careful with its respiratory depressant and your cardiovascular complications. So you have to maintain the ventilation if at all BZDs are supposed to be combined with opioid analgesic like fentanyl. Okay, but when BZD and fentanyl is combined together, another additional anesthetic may not be required. So it is preferably combined with BZD for minor procedures like diagnostic procedures, endoscopies, angiographies, or minor procedures and burn dressings. Okay, wherein high degree of anesthesia is not required. At that time you can combine fentanyl with BZDs and it can serve your purpose over here. Okay, now the problem with the use of fentanyl is that the person may recall the events. Actually, if you can see that amnesia should be produced, that is, which is an ideal property which is expected, that is, the person should not recall what was happening. But when fentanyl is used or when an opioid analgesic is used, the person may recall what was happening. Okay, so for that matter you should use drugs along with it which should produce amnesia so that the person should not recall what was happening. Okay, now another advantage with this fentanyl, okay, when IV fentanyl is given, the person remains drowsy. Okay, so sedation will be produced over here when in this combination, but the consciousness is maintained and the person's cooperation. You may seek the cooperation from the person, so you can command the person. Say for example, respiratory depression is produced. Okay, but what you can do is you can direct the person to breathe. Breathe. You can encourage the person to breathe. So you can provide that assistance. The person can hear and feel under the influence of this combination. So here what happens is you can direct the person so that the respiratory depression may be ruled out. You can encourage the person to breathe heavily so that you can command the person. You can seek the cooperation from the person also when this combination is used. Now one more problem with this opioid analgesic is chest muscle tone. is increased over here. Okay, even the tone of the masseters. Masseters, these are the skeletal muscles which are mainly used for chewing action. Okay, these are present in your cheek. Okay, so tone of these muscles, the chest muscles, meaning here intercostal muscles are present. Okay, which are involved in the breathing. Okay, so the muscle tone over here may increase. Okay, so it will affect the ventilation, because the skeletal muscles, your respiratory muscles in your chest has to relax for your thoracic cage to increase in the size. So it can affect the ventilation. If at all this fentanyl is given very rapidly, rapid IV injection of this fentanyl, it may result in increase in the tone. So at times you may have to give a muscle relaxant also along with it. Okay, otherwise the respiration of the person may get affected. Then other effects include decrease in the heart rate. So bradycardia is produced. Now why this bradycardia is produced is because it stimulates the vagus. The vagal nerve which supplies your heart, it produces the bradycardia. So this vagal nerve is stimulated by fentanyl. So that's how heart rate is decreased over here. Okay, fall in BP, it is seen, but it is light. Okay, it is not very much severe. Heart is also not sensitized towards ADR. Okay, so arrhythmogenic tendency of ADR is not precipitated when it is combined with it. Okay, so no arrhythmias will be produced. Then if you can see the cerebral blood flow and oxygen consumption, these are slightly increased. So these are safer in whom already if there is any increase in the intracranial pressures. Okay, then when fentanyl is used, okay, some supplemental doses may be required. Like it's not that once if you administer fentanyl, it might not be sufficient. If at all you want a prolonged action for this fentanyl, you may have to give some supplemental doses. Maybe every 30 minutes you may have to administer the additional doses of this fentanyl for prolonged kind of procedures. Okay, addition may be required over here. Then nausea and vomiting and itching, these may occur during recovery, that is in the post operative periods. Fentanyl may start producing nausea, vomiting and itching sensation. Okay, now to avoid many of the severe conditions which can be precipitated, like say for example respiratory depression, these can be reversed by giving an opioid antagonist, naloxone. This is an opioid antagonist which can reverse all the actions of fentanyl. Okay, so whatever respiratory depression or mental confusion kind of conditions which are precipitated during the recovery, these can be antagonized by the naloxone, which is an antagonist for fentanyl. Okay, so generally fentanyl, as we have seen, that these are used as a supplemental drug or an adjuvant drug. Okay, maybe in case of spinal or nerve block anesthesia, also it can be combined. Okay, so these are actually the local anesthetic techniques. Okay, so it can be used along with general anesthetic, it can be used along with local anesthetics. Also it can be used to relieve the post-operative pain, pre-operative as well as post-operative pain. It can be used as a pre-anesthetic medication also. So it can be used to relieve the pain pre-operatively as well as post-operatively. Okay, apart from fentanyl, okay, other agents also can be used, alfentanyl, sufentanil, remifentanil. These are the other analogs which can be used in place of fentanyl. Coming to the next drug, that is dexmedetomidine. Okay, this is actually a centrally acting agent. It acts on the central alpha-2 adrenergic receptors. Okay, so because of activation, it acts as an agonist at these receptors in your brain, and that's how it produces sedation and analgesia. Another, the clonidine also acts by the similar mechanism of action. It is an antihypertensive drug actually, but clonidine also has the same property. Okay, it also can act on the central alpha-2 receptor, adrenergic receptors. Okay, so this, coming back to this drug dexmedetomidine. Okay, this is a recently introduced agent. Okay, so it acts specifically on the alpha-2A subtype of receptors in your brain. So it acts as an agonist. It binds to these receptors and stimulates, and that's how it produces sedation and analgesia. Generally, this is not a sole agent which may be used. It is used in combination maybe, and to sedate the critically ill patient or those who are ventilated, who are critically ill patients admitted to the ICUs. Okay, so used for these special purpose, or it may be used as an adjunct to the anesthesia. In case of balanced anesthesia, it can be utilized. Okay, administered in the form of IV infusion. This is how it is administered. Okay, direct IV injection is not given, but it is administered in the form of an infusion over a period of time. Okay, so because of this, sympathetic response to stress, okay, and noxious stimuli, these are blunted. So if at all there is any kind of produces hypotension, bradycardia and dryness of mouth. These are the only 3 side effects which are shown by this drug. So this finishes the individual drugs. Coming to a small concept known as conscious sedation. Okay, now as the aim implies, conscious sedation, meaning here sedation is produced. Unconsciousness is not produced over here. Okay, but person is still conscious, but he or she is sedated or drowsy. So here it is a altered state of your consciousness. The person is not very much alert. Okay, neither the person is unconscious. So it produces a trance-like state. Okay, generally it is used to carry out some diagnostic procedures or short therapeutic procedures or dental procedures, or to relieve the patient from apprehension. That is the fear of, maybe some people, they are afraid of operations or some procedures. So that apprehension or that anxiety can be relieved by this particular condition. Okay, so here physiological and psychological stress may be relieved. Okay, so that fear will be allayed. The person will not lose the consciousness, mind it. So here drugs which are used, they produce a state of CNS depression. Okay, unconsciousness is not produced. Only CNS depressant action is produced. So that much CNS depression, so that the person can withstand that trespass or whatever procedures are being carried out. So the stress which it generates, all those procedures, so that can be withstand or that can be bared by the person. Okay, so such type of CNS depressant action is produced. The person is still conscious. You can communicate with the person. Okay, it maintains the communication with the patient, so that you can command the person. Maybe if respiratory depression is that, you can command that person to breathe more forcibly, so that patent airways may be maintained. Okay, so these are used for minor procedures, diagnostic procedures preferably. Okay, drugs used for this purpose is diazepam, propofol, fentanyl and nitrous oxide. These are the 4 agents which can be used to produce conscious sedation. The next point is complications of general anesthesia. Okay, now there are certain complications which may be produced during anesthesia and certain complications which are produced after the anesthesia is over. Okay, after the in a post-operative period. Okay, so coming to the complications which may be produced during the anesthesia. Respiratory depression, we have already seen all these as we have seen the actions of individual drugs. Okay, respiratory depression may be produced. Hypercarbia is one of the complications. Because of the respiratory depression, carbon dioxide may start accumulating in your body. So hypercarbia may be produced. Then because of the irritant vapors may be or certain agents producing systemic action, salivation may be increased or respiratory secretions may be increased. Okay, now these are reduced nowadays because of the use of less irritant agent. Nowadays we don't use such agents which produce irritating vapors. So these are ruled out nowadays with the use of pleasant anesthetic, and if at all they are used, there is a solution to that. Some pre-anesthetic medication can be used which can reduce these. Salivation also and respiratory secretions can also be reduced. Specifically anticholinergic drugs are used for this purpose. Then complications of your cardiovascular system like arrhythmias may be precipitated. Asystole, this is also a type of arrhythmia wherein there is no generation of any kind of impulse from your SC node. Okay, or fall in BP may be seen. Then aspiration of your gastric content may take place, okay, because of the vomiting or maybe reduction in the LES tone. Okay, so the content from your stomach may regurgitate. So the contents may aspirate into your lungs. So accidental entry into your lungs may take place. And the stomach content are acidic, so it can result in acid pneumonitis. So this is one more complication. Then awareness. Okay, actually amnesia should be produced, but certain agents or maybe sometimes during balanced anesthesia, when the anesthesia is kept light or when opioid analgesics are used in combination, at that time awareness, that is recall of the dreadful events which were taking place during your surgery. The person may recall sometimes the events which were taking place during the surgery. Okay, so this is one more problem. Apart from that, delirium, convulsions may be produced. Again, other type of excitatory effects may also be seen, especially with the IV anesthetics. And these are specially seen when phenothiazines or hyoscine. These are actually pre-anesthetic medication. Okay, we'll see what the purpose is, why they are given as a pre-anesthetic medication. So, especially these side effects are seen when phenothiazine or hyoscine are given as pre-anesthetic medication. Now, how to overcome this? This can be overcome by combining with an opioid analgesic. Okay, apart from that, fire and explosion may take place. This is specifically true for those anesthetic which generate the vapors which are inflammable or explosive. Okay, nowadays non-inflammable agents are preferably used. Okay, so there are less chances of fire or explosions to take place. Then complications after the anesthesia. Okay, in the post-operative period, the problems like nausea and vomiting may be precipitated. Then persistent sedation or the person's psychomotor function may remain impaired over hours after the surgery is over. The person may not be able to stand on his own or walk on his own. So the person's psychomotor function may be impaired, okay, for hours together. So this is after effect which is produced. The pneumonia, as we have seen, due to aspiration. Atelectasis, this is a collapse of the lung. Entire lung or the lobe of lung may be collapsed. Sometimes, if at all there are problems like pneumothorax and all, there are more chances of precipitation of this condition. Then organ toxicities may occur. We have seen that certain agents, they have deleterious effects on liver, kidney. Halothane we have seen. The metabolite is responsible for liver damage. Urine output may be reduced. Okay, so liver and kidney may get affected by certain agents. The nerve pulses is another problem. Okay, that is the nerves wherever it is injected. Okay, supposing if there is faulty injections, if they are given, the nerves in that vicinity may get damaged. Okay, so nerve pulses may be precipitated. Then emergence delirium, that is delirium, a confused state or uneasiness or mental clouding will be produced during the recovery. Okay, so that is known as emergence delirium. This is seen with certain agents. Then cognitive defects. Okay, so cognition of the person's ability to perceive, to remember things. So this functions of your brain may get declined, especially when drugs or these anesthetics are used over a long period of time, especially if they are used in the elderly patients. Okay, maybe the person may have already suffered from some kind of cognitive disorder, so in them the conditions may become even more severe. Okay, so prolonged use of unnecessary prolonged use of anesthetic should be discouraged. The next point is drug interactions. Okay, what happens when these other drugs are given along with these anesthetics? Okay, so now patients who are already on antihypertensive drug. Antihypertensives are those drugs which are used to reduce the BP. So if at all these are combined with general anesthetic, so if a patient is a hypertensive patient who is already taking a regular antihypertensive medication, what will happen to your BP? BP will fall markedly, because we have seen general anesthetics, most of the general anesthetics also produce fall in BP. So there will be additive fall in BP, marked fall in BP will be seen. Then neuroleptics, drugs like neuroleptics, these are antipsychotic drugs used for treatment of psychological conditions, or opioids, or clonidine. Okay, or monoamine oxidase inhibitors, MAO inhibitors, when these are combined with anesthetics, these drugs can potentiate the anesthetic action. That is, more profound anesthesia will be produced, okay, when these are combined. So you need to lower the doses of anesthetics, okay, because their DRCs are already steeper, we have seen, okay, some of the agents which are potent. Then halothane, it sensitizes the heart towards the arrhythmogenic tendency of ADR, we have seen. So when halothane anesthesia is given, and if ADR is given along with it, then there are greater chances of precipitation of arrhythmia. Certain other anesthetics also have this tendency, okay, but halothane is the most prevalent drug which can precipitate these arrhythmias when ADR is combined over here. Then if at all a person is on a continuous therapy with corticosteroids, some steroid therapy is going on in that particular patient, okay, so at that time, okay, if anesthesia is supposed to be given, so in such patients you need to give an additional dose. During the operations you may have to give an additional dose of 100 milligrams of hydrocortisone in such individuals who are on a continuous treatment with corticosteroids. If suppose they are supposed to be anesthetized, you have to give a dose of hydrocortisone during the surgeries, because anesthesia is a stress, so it can precipitate adrenal insufficiency and cardiovascular collapse. So to prevent this, intraoperative injection of hydrocortisone may be required in such individuals. Then the last interaction is, in case of diabetics, if the person is diabetic and has to be anesthetized, the need for insulin is increased in diabetics when the person is administered with general anesthesia, okay. So in such individuals, in diabetics, those who are on oral hypoglycemics, okay, so in such individuals also you may have to give insulin, okay. Though here in those patients who are on oral hypoglycemics, insulin actually is not required over here, but since general anesthesia, it increases the need of insulin by the diabetic patient. So that's why you may have to switch over to plain insulin whenever a general anesthesia have to be given to a diabetic patient, okay. So this is an interaction specifically seen in the diabetic patient. And coming to the last part and the very important part, that is pre-anesthetic medication. So as the name implies, this is the medication which refers to the use of drugs before the anesthesia to make it more pleasant and safe. So this is something which is given before the anesthesia, pre-anesthetic medication. Now why do you need to give this pre-anesthetic medication? So the reasons for this include to produce the amnesia for pre and post-operative events, so that the person should not recall what was happening. Then to relieve the anxiety or apprehension pre-operatively. Some people may be afraid of operative procedures, they may be apprehensive, so to control that, or to facilitate the smooth induction, so that induction becomes smooth, the person should not struggle during the induction. So for that purpose such medications may be given. Then to supplement the analgesic action of anesthetics and potentiate them, okay. So certain drugs are added for their analgesic property and also to potentiate their action, so that lower doses of anesthetic can be used. Then certain agents are introduced to decrease the secretions and vagal stimulation. So secretions which may be increased during the operative procedures, okay, so that can be reduced, saliva secretion or tracheobronchial secretion, or vagal stimulation which produces bradycardia, that can also be ruled out by addition of certain drugs before anesthesia is given. Then certain drugs may also be used for their antiemetic effect. So antiemetics are given pre-operatively, so that nausea and vomiting which may be precipitated, which is a complication, it may not be precipitated in the post-operative period. Then certain drugs are used to reduce the acidity or volume of the gastric juices, okay, because regurgitation is possible, aspiration in the lungs is possible, so aspiration pneumonitis may be precipitated. So to avoid that, gastric acidity may be reduced by using certain agents. Now let us see what are the types of drugs which are used. First one is sedative and anti-anxiety drugs. Drugs like BZDs, okay, examples include diazepam and lorazepam. These are quite popularly used as pre-anesthetic medication because they have a very good anti-anxiety property. Tranquilizers they are, that is, they will calm down the person. They will smoothen the induction. Induction will become more pleasant. Okay, and there is loss of recall of preoperative events, especially with lorazepam. Amnesia will be produced. However, respiratory depression and accentuating, that is, increase in the post-operative vomiting may be seen with this agent. Okay, but quite many advantages are there. So also when they are when a local anesthetic is supposed to be used in combination over here, they can also prevent the CNS toxicity of this local anesthetic. Okay, and also when they are used along with the pethidine or fentanyl. Okay, so for a variety of surgical procedures or endoscopies, this can be used. Okay, local anesthetics can be used. So to avoid this CNS toxicity, these agents can be added. Okay, then midazolam is another agent which produces a very good amnesic action. Okay, it is a potent agent and also having short lasting action. Okay, so that's a problem actually. Okay, but this is a better one because it produces good degree of amnesia. Okay, the patient will not recall the events. Then another drug preferably used for this purpose, sedative and anti-anxiety purpose, is basically it is used for the sedative property, promethazine. It's actually an antihistaminic drug. It has sedative property, anti-emetic property, so this is the added advantage. It is also having anticholinergic property, so secretions also are reduced. Less of respiratory depression is seen with this agent promethazine, so it's a plus point. Next kind of agent uses opioid. Opioid analgesics may be used, like morphine or pethidine may be used intramuscularly. So these will allay the anxiety and apprehension of the operations. Pre-operative apprehension may be reduced. Also produce pre and post-operative analgesia, abolition of the pain, smoothen the induction. Also they will help in reduction in the dose of anesthetic, so that they are used in the combination for balanced anesthesia. Also those anesthetic which are having poor analgesic property like thiopentone or halothane, so they will supplement their poor analgesic action also. Okay, or those which are having weak anesthetic property. So opioids, when they are added, they will help in production of adequate anesthesia. Okay, now there are certain disadvantages, however, okay, with the use of these opioid analgesics. They depress the respiration. Okay, respiration may be depressed. They can interfere with the pupillary signs of anesthesia. Pupils dilate in certain stages, so you will come to know what stages are being produced. Again, they may produce fall in BP during anesthesia. They can precipitate the asthma because of bronchoconstriction. They also tend to delay the recovery from the anesthesia. So these are the problems which can be encountered. Okay, apart from that, lack of amnesia. We have seen that person may recall what was happening. Flushing may be produced, okay, due to vasodilatation. Delayed gastric emptying. Okay, GI motility is reduced. Biliary spasm may be produced. So these are other problems. Apart from that, certain patient may experience dysphoria as a feeling of uneasiness or dislike. Okay, so such kind of effects may be precipitated post-operatively. Morphine specifically precipitates constipation in the post-operative period. Vomiting or urinary retention may take place, so there may be difficulty in urination. Then pethidine, when it is used, which is another type of opioid analgesic, tachycardia may be precipitated. Okay, so generally use of opioids, this is restricted to those wherein those patients who are suffering from pre-operative pain. Okay, and you need to select an appropriate analgesic and dose needs to be adjusted accordingly. So whenever possible, use of fentanyl is promoted because it is safer in terms of all these effects which are seen. And the next type of drug is anticholinergic. Okay, because these drugs can help in reduction in the salivary and bronchial secretion. Drugs like atropine, hyoscine or glycopyrrolate may be used. But nowadays less irritant anesthetics are used, so that the need for this anticholinergics have declined. Okay, so generally they are used to prevent the vagal bradycardia. Okay, so vagal nerve, when it is stimulated, bradycardia is produced. Again, hypotension. So to prevent that, generally it is used, or as a prophylaxis for laryngospasm, which will resist the ventilation or maybe some kind of intubations. Okay, so for this purpose it is generally used. Hyoscine, in addition to all these effects, it can produce amnesia. Person will not recall. It also has anti-emetic property also, but recovery from the anesthesia will be delayed. Also, some patient disorientation may be produced. Emergence delirium also may be produced when hyoscine is used. Okay, but the anti-bradycardiac effect, this is also less marked. Okay, so the main purpose why they are used is to reduce the tendency to produce a bradycardia because of the vagal action. So this is less marked. So that's why hyoscine is not a very popular drug which is used. Okay, apart from this hyoscine, glycopyrrolate may be preferred because it is twice as potent, and it is also longer acting as compared to atropine. Okay, so it is a very good atropine substitute which can be preferably used. Okay, which does not produce any kind of central effects or central side effects. Okay, even the anti-secretory effects, these are also more marked as compared to atropine, and tachycardia precipitation tendency is also less marked. So that's why this glycopyrrolate is preferred. Then these also dilate the pupils. Okay, they dilate the pupils so that they also abolish the pupillary signs, wherein you can detect the depth of anesthesia or the stage of anesthesia. Also, they increase the chances of reflux, gastric reflux, okay, by decreasing the LES tone, so that the contents may regurgitate. Okay, so this is a problem with the use of these anticholinergic drugs. Also, these are not supposed to be used in febrile patient in whom already there is a fever. Okay, in such patients you are not supposed to administer this kind of drug. Another main problem with this is dryness of mouth. Because of decrease in the secretions, dryness of mouth in pre and post operative period may be produced, which may be quite distressing. And the next type of drug is neuroleptics. Okay, antipsychotic drugs like chlorpromazine, triflupromazine or haloperidol may be utilized as a pre-anesthetic medication for their anti-anxiety property. Induction may be smoothened, or they may also have anti-emetic property. Okay, so that's for these purposes actually they are used. Okay, but the problem is that they potentiate the respiratory depression, hypotension which may be produced by your anesthetic, and also recovery is also delayed from your anesthesia. Again, even involuntary movements and muscle dystonias, these are quite common side effects of neuroleptics. So these are especially seen in the children, so preferably avoided in small children. Then the next type of drug is H2 blocker and proton pump inhibitor. So these are H2 blockers like ranitidine, famotidine, or proton pump inhibitors like omeprazole and pantoprazole. These are given a day before or before the surgery, so that the acidity is reduced, the gastric acidity is reduced, the volume of your gastric content is reduced, so that even if there is regurgitation, aspiration, pneumonitis is not a complication. So also it will help in preventing the stress ulcers which may be precipitated due to stressful conditions. Ulcers may be precipitated, so these can also be prevented by these agents. Next class is antiemetics. Okay, so drugs like metoclopramide, so when these are given pre-operatively, these can extend the anti-emetic effect, because we have seen nausea and vomiting is a complication. So that can be avoided by anti-emetics which can be given before the operations has to be carried out. So these metoclopramide, it's increases the gastric emptying, it's a gastric hurrying agent. Even domperidone is used, okay, nowadays, because the problem with metoclopramide is that it produces extrapyramidal effect and motor restlessness. Domperidone does not have this problem, so that's why domperidone is preferred over metoclopramide. Another drug is ondansetron. This is a 5-HT3 blocker, also has anti-emetic property. Okay, so this can be preferably used. Okay, so this finishes the chapter. Coming to the important questions. classification of general anesthetic is very important. Stages of anesthesia is very important. You need to give the diagram along with the explanation of the stages. Then the factors are also very important. Factors, the partial pressure in the inhaled air, partial pressure in the brain, blood, solubility and all that. All those factors are important. Then this is also important. Second gas effect and diffusion hypoxia. These two concepts shown by nitrous oxide are also very important from exam point of view. Then the mechanism of action of general anesthesia, the ideal properties which are expected by patient, surgeon or anesthetist, then the complications which we have seen in today's lecture, and the pre-anesthetic medication is also very important from exam point of view. It has appeared